The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Boy, what a show. Big time show today as we get you ready for that team called Arkansas that is actually on the schedule after a bye week. Also, we'll visit with a friend from Oxford to talk about Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss with the news not only of the SEC but the nation as they fall to Kentucky, and that certainly seems like a much more difficult game. We'll discuss why. So also on the program today, while I don't believe Nico Iamaleava can win the Heisman, and Caleb doesn't see it that way, we shall discuss. Also, while the Vols are projected by an analytics person I spoke to go 10-2, and they will be double-digit favorites against everybody except for two teams. You probably know who they are. The surprising number that you'll find out of that segment, and we look forward to it, it'll be that point spread that we have projected by purely analytics on the Alabama game, which some people after watching Saturday night might think, oh, those two teams are way better than Tennessee. Well, no, I don't think Vegas is going to think so. This day in Tennessee sports history, stat of the day as well, our SEC power rankings, which I assume would be pretty volatile. We've got a lot going on. Caleb Calhoun, after a bye week, how are you, sir?
Oh, I am tremendous, Dave. How are you doing today?
I'm great. So if you're on board, go ahead and click the like and subscribe button. Let's go ahead and do this. First of all, I want to start the poll question with this, Caleb, and that is, what was the biggest news from the SEC weekend? All right, so it can be, I believe it's Ole Miss after they lost to Kentucky. I think it's Ole Miss, but we'll discuss. What do you think the biggest news is? Is it that Alabama is still as good as they are, which I don't necessarily think, but we'll discuss that. So we'll get to the poll question. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. It is time for four downs, and we get to that right now. It's 4 questions about the SEC as we focus on this past weekend. Here we go. Hit the like and subscribe button. 4 downs. Now brought to you by our good friend T. Scott Jones at Banks & Jones.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, go ahead and set us up now. What's our poll question?
All right, so what's the biggest news from the SEC weekend? Alabama beating Georgia, Kentucky upsetting Ole Miss, Auburn's continued collapse, or something else. Okay. And by the way, Auburn cost me some money because I didn't think when they were – never mind. I cannot believe them.
Well, here we go. I think it's hands down. I don't even think it's close. I think it's Ole Miss losing. Can you make an argument for anything else in that regard?
Yeah, I'm going Alabama. I'm sorry, I'm going Alabama winning just because that was a I have to really reset the clock on my thoughts on Jalen Milroe and this offense after watching that game and the mental toughness that he showed, the mental toughness that a 17-year-old showed, balling for them. And also just that type of game is why you live for college football. It's everything that's so awesome about college football. And also the reason I say it's the biggest story is maybe I was wrong and maybe the regular season intensity didn't die off with the expanded college football playoff.
Somebody would like to say I told you so, but I'm not that type of person.
I mean, that was intense. And you could tell they both realized that they needed to win that game just to at least have breathing room for the playoff.
Yeah, that was pretty good stuff. I didn't see anybody saying, oh, we can just go back. Now, there were some post-game comments about that, certainly, but I did not get that feel that, oh, just lost a regular season game. No big deal. So let's go ahead and get to it. Cooper Mays will tell you what to do.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you, Coop. I appreciate that. And let's go with what down?
Coop here. First down.
Thank you, Coop. Oklahoma, NC State, both win. That was a big win for Oklahoma. NC State won as well. So we wake up on a Monday or Sunday, and you look at Tennessee and their schedule, and it looks a lot better than it did on Friday.
Certainly. And that was one of my biggest takeaways was Tennessee's schedule. And this is a big reason Tennessee won the bye week. We talked last week on how 10-2 might not get Tennessee to the playoff. But Oklahoma surviving Auburn, NC State beating Northern Illinois. And yeah, it was an ugly win over Northern Illinois, but Northern Illinois did beat Notre Dame. All of a sudden, Tennessee can claim, as of this moment still, that those are two quality wins, particularly with the way they beat both teams because they beat the brakes off NC State. And they could have beaten the brakes off Oklahoma if they wanted to.
True. Oklahoma, Tennessee is very fortunate that Brent Venables totally mishandled that quarterback situation. If he knew that Jenkins was that good, is it Michael Jenkins?
Michael Hawkins.
Michael Hawkins. If he knew that Michael Hawkins was that much better than Jackson Arnold, he should have started him in the Tennessee game, or he should have started him at the beginning of the season. We have knocked on Josh Heupel before about his selection at quarterback, i.e. Milton over Hooker or i.e. Milton over Iamaleava, but there's just no excuse for that. That guy's on a different level. You could have taken your lumps against lesser teams earlier on, and Tennessee would have faced a much more difficult foe had Hawkins been the guy in that Tennessee game. But that's history. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Arkansas loses a dogfight with Texas A&M. What did you see about the Hogs? We're going to have a preview of Arkansas as it's Arkansas week. Tennessee will travel to Fayetteville, which is a dump. And but what did you take away from Arkansas, particularly as it pertains to the Vols?
That they're chokers. They keep choking. They should be undefeated right now. Arkansas should be 5-0, getting ready to host Tennessee, but they've choked 2 games away, including this one. And Tennessee should be very happy about that because, one, Arkansas can't really run the ball. They are gashed because of what they had, because of the fight they were in with Texas A&M, and they're demoralized. So, I mean, if you're Arkansas, I mean, I know it's Tennessee, you're playing a top 5 team, Dave, but how do you get up for a game like this when you know you should be 5-0 in your mind?
Point spread is right now.
What is the point spread? Actually, I need to pull that up.
Okay, we'll get to that. All right. What down next, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Third down is this. Alabama beats Georgia. Now, my wife asked me over the weekend, who do we want to win for the business? And I said, well, you want Alabama because you would want the two teams to be undefeated heading into that game. And it would be more pub for Tennessee, so it would help the Vols and subsequently would help us. So, Caleb, I think Alabama winning, beating Georgia is good for Tennessee because they get a chance to host the number 1 team at home if things continue to play out as we think.
No question. And Alabama's going to be undefeated when they go face Tennessee. And I feel pretty confident Tennessee's going to be undefeated when they host Alabama too. And so this is a collision. And by the way, not only that, Dave, there is a great chance this is a 3-1 matchup. It can't be 2-1 because I don't think Tennessee's going to leapfrog Texas before the but Ohio State could slip up before then. This is going to be that game is the same weekend Georgia and Texas play, and Tennessee Alabama is going to be a bigger game. And the other huge part about Alabama beating Georgia is this: if Georgia had beaten Alabama, Tennessee could. Let's get this out of the way. You and I both agree Tennessee has a better chance of beating Alabama than Georgia. I don't care about Saturday. They have a better chance of beating Alabama than Georgia, right?
Well, okay. Here's a couple of things I think about Georgia. Can we talk about that game for a second? Who did Georgia play the week before?
Well, they had a bye, didn't they?
Oh, Georgia played Kentucky.
That's 2 weeks before. They had a bye.
Okay. So I can't help but think if there was some sort of a physical hangover. The other thing is, but Stetson Bennett in particular is not a very good quarterback. Let me tell you a little something about Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck. They would be better off to have Stetson Bennett right now. And I'm going to tell you why. Carson Beck, somebody mentioned to me that they thought Carson Beck before the season started could be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. That's ludicrous. We talk about arm strength and how you reach a certain point and it's not a factor. He has an arm strength problem. He cannot get the ball consistently where he wants it. He missed several throws because of a lack of arm strength. And Caleb, Georgia is doing something right now, and this is insight you don't get anywhere else. Georgia is doing something right now on purpose that I've never seen be a part of a game plan from week to week, and that is the underthrow. You know, the underthrow where the receiver has the advantage because he's coming back to the ball and you can get a pass interference call or make a catch even though he's covered?
Yes.
Okay, that's something you do on the fly, or that's something you go to your buddy and say, hey, let's try this. That's their passing game plan, is the underthrow. He does not have the arm to scare anybody. So I might disagree with you there. I think they've got a big-time quarterback problem. I think Georgia is as beatable as Alabama.
Okay, but no, I agree. But then it's the home versus away. That's why I said Alabama's a better chance. The reason Tennessee has a better chance of beating Alabama is because they get Alabama at home and have to go to Georgia. You got to give like 3 or 4 points in the SEC for home and away, right?
I'm just talking about 2 teams matching up. I don't
No,
care.
I agree, but we're talking about Tennessee's overall schedule real quick. They get Alabama at home and Georgia on the road. Just by that very nature, you would say they have a better chance of beating Alabama. Just by having Alabama in Neyland Stadium.
I'm not so sure. I mean, if I told you that 2 teams are pretty equal talent-wise, one has a big-time quarterback problem, I think that overrides home or away. I mean, I think Carson Beck is that big of a problem.
I can't call him that big of a problem.
No,
I can't.
I watched
he
the
led
game
him back, and they almost beat Alabama. I mean, he did lead him back to the.
Why did they not? Because he tried to throw a jump ball, and he couldn't get air underneath it and threw an interception.
Okay,
Caleb, that guy's, unless it comes out that he's got something torn in his throwing shoulder or something, he does not have a strong enough arm to scare anybody.
Okay, but I don't think.
And he's not as good of a runner as Stetson Bennett.
Okay, but I know he's a much better runner, but I don't think Milroe's the best thrower either. And so, I mean,
yeah, but Milroe's an elite runner.
No, okay, fair. I'm sorry. I'm still going to say Tennessee has a better chance of beating Alabama than Georgia because it's in Neyland Stadium.
Okay,
and
make that the poll question. And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with you, but I don't think it's a lock.
And well, where I was getting at with all of this is because Alabama's going to Knoxville and Tennessee could beat Alabama. That now with Georgia having a loss, Tennessee has still a very good chance to finish top 2 in the SEC, even if they lose to Georgia in Athens in November. They can now even more afford a loss to Georgia if you care about the SEC standings, which you should, because caring about the SEC standings, as much as I don't care about winning the SEC title, at least gives you the leverage of where you will be in the playoff when the rankings come. It'll give you more leverage to figure out where you want to go.
Let me ask you this question, and we don't, because I feel like they're both difficult games. But let me ask you this question: do you believe that Tennessee can get pressure on Carson Beck?
Yes, but not. I actually think they have a better chance of getting pressure on Jalen Milroe. I'm going to be honest. I do.
Okay, fine, but Milroe's got escapability. Beck has very average escapability. Okay, we can agree to disagree. Let's go ahead and put that as a poll question because that's compelling, intriguing to me that you and I see it so different. It's why we don't do the show over the phone when we're laying it out. I'm interested because I come away from that game thinking that Georgia has a monstrous quarterback problem. And we said that about Stetson Bennett. They still won a championship, okay? And Stetson Bennett improved He maximized all of his abilities last year. That's why they won a championship. And Carson Beck may do that. Or Carson Beck's lack of arm talent may just prevent them from being able to beat elite teams.
Okay. That might.
I want to hear what you have to say. We're going to get to 4th down 2. Show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb, you were going to say?
I was going to say that I still think Georgia has more talent at a lot of other places, which could give Tennessee trouble. And as far as Milroe's legs, I've seen enough. I think Aaron Carter and Keenan Peely would do a much better job containing Jalen Milroe than that Georgia defense did. And I would even add that I do agree with you that Georgia, the difference with Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett, they're building the team around Carson Beck, where they were trying to win in spite of Stetson Bennett. And that is a problem.
Well, I mean, okay, they're building the team. I mean,
no, they're relying on Carson Beck to try to win the game. Put it that way.
Okay. I just, do you agree that, so you don't agree with my premise that Carson Beck's a problem?
And I don't disagree because I think he's only a problem insofar as I think Kirby Smart, now that with Mike Bobo as offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo is the problem, guys. Let's just put it out there. Mike Bobo is not a good offensive coordinator, and I told you guys that from the start. Kirby Smart is Mike Bobo was trying to make Carson Beck the centerpiece of this offense. That was not the case with Stetson Bennett when Todd Monken was there. Okay,
no, I agree, but
that's the problem. So,
okay, he has an arm problem. I'm just gonna leave it there. He's not nearly. He doesn't have the arm strength. Quinn Ewers, Nico, Arch Manning.
Who's got an amazing arm? Did y'all see him on Saturday?
It's not the upper. We don't fall in love with the arm. Okay, you have to have let's say a B arm to be able to play. After that, it's kind of icing on the cake.
Totally agree.
But I don't think he has a B arm. I think he's got a high school arm.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Made a face. I don't know if you agree with that or just. I just don't think he has a good arm. And the one long touchdown pass, by the way, was way underthrown. And Kirk Herbstreit said, "What a great throw!" And at one point, Kirk Herbstreit too said, "There he is," and he underthrew it. Anyway, I'm done. Ole Miss is not
Carson
a threat.
Beck or Rick Clausen, stronger arm.
Well, Carson Beck. Ole Miss is not a threat in the SEC race.
Yes, this is a big benefit for Tennessee. I told you where they even though you don't care about the SEC championship, where you land in the SEC is relevant. So you want to eliminate threats where you can. Ole Miss is no longer a threat. Ole Miss still has to play Georgia. That's going to benefit Tennessee either way, whoever loses now. So this loss to Kentucky is a huge, huge boost to them. Also, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but I mean, is this a sign, given how Lane Kiffin threw this team together, does the team come undone?
I would tell you this. If this was the old system where just 2 teams make a championship game, yes. If this were the old system where 4 teams made a championship, maybe. But I think you're underestimating Kentucky a little bit. That's a tough, physical football team. And did you see and kudos to Bob Stoops. Did you see the press conference of Lane Kiffin after the game? I watched the whole thing. It was fantastic.
No, I did not.
Yeah. Okay.
You mean kudos to Mark Stoops, by the way?
Hmm?
You mean kudos to Mark Stoops?
Yes. What did I say?
You said Bob Stoops.
Sorry. I've had too much caffeine. All right. So he said after the game, he goes, "You can look at the analytics and everything." Lane said, he goes, "Stoops, he's never called that play in his life." Talking about the long touchdown pass at the end, or the long pass at the end. Caleb, Stoops went out of character. He said, literally, he's never called that play in his life. And you know that Kiffin loves to play analytics. They brought pressure, and Stoops just won a big game by trusting the long ball, which he's never done before. So Kentucky has a very physical team, especially on defense. I think that's suddenly a much more disconcerting game for Tennessee fans than it was before. I don't think that's just a gimme. I think Tennessee will be double-digit favorites, but they better be healthy, and that's later in the year. Same thing for Kentucky. Kentucky's usually better in the first half of the year because they don't have depth. They get a couple of guys hurt. That happened last year, and it seems like it happens 1 or 2 times every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that's going to help Tennessee in this one is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pulling up, they get Kentucky off a bye and at home. Those 2 things should help out significantly. Because Kentucky will have 3 straight games before they go visit Knoxville. So that's the one benefit, because the thing about Kentucky is they're not that deep, particularly
Never.
one. And this is the one significant issue with Kentucky. They have a really bad offensive line. What's one thing you don't want to have when you're facing this Tennessee team?
Oh, bad offensive line. What game will be more difficult for Tennessee? Georgia on the road, 76%. Alabama at home, 24%. There is our poll question.
Our fans, our listeners are smart. They are very intelligent, and they are geniuses because they just proved I'm right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not necessarily arguing with you. I think that overall Georgia is a better football team. If Carson Beck plays at a high level, but that certainly I don't think is possible. So, no, I'll go ahead and tell you. I think Georgia is the easier game to win. I'll go on record. Yeah, I will tell you right now, I think the Georgia game will be closer than the Alabama game, win or lose. If Tennessee were to lose both those games, I think there'll be more in it against Georgia than Alabama, because Jalen Milroe can do some crazy stuff. By the way, a bunch of people asking you to eat crow about Jalen Milroe, and I know you're willing to do that. We both are. So so I'm going to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I will willingly eat crow. I'm not eating crow on him. I'm eating crow on Kalen DeBoer. I did not think Jalen Milroe was a fit for this offense at all. And Dave, this is the mark of a good coach, right? Is when you have a system, you have a quarterback that's not a real great fit for the system, and you completely tailor your system to that quarterback and make him look amazing. That's what Kalen DeBoer is doing, guys. In case you haven't noticed, and Dave, you tell me if I'm not noticing this, Jalen Milroe is still a first read guy, right? He's not going through his progressions.
Yeah, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I just think he's a special athlete. Derek made the comparison of Tommy Frazier, and yeah, in a different sort of way. I mean, they obviously don't run the option, but they do kind of look alike. He's just a monster. I don't know if he'll be a good NFL quarterback or whatever, but he changes the game, and I don't think there's any question about that. So let's get into this Nico Heisman Trophy thing. What are the odds? You said he dropped in the odds, right?
Yes, I'm pulling the odds up right now. Just give me 1 second to do it on FanDuel.
Okay, because I have a column online where I don't think that Nico can win the Heisman Trophy anymore, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I'll explain to you why. Give me those odds.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to pull them up. This is odds via FanDuel, by the way. Nico was 4th last week, in case you guys forgot. And now he is down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th. He's dropped to 6 at plus 1,800 now, which is actually lower than when he started, funny enough. So his odds are now lower than when the season started.
Okay. And I think that's appropriate based off what Tennessee has as a whole. I don't think it's an indication that he's played poorly whatsoever. I don't believe Nico Iamaleava can win the Heisman. And there's a couple of different reasons why. One is Tennessee's football team is better overall. And I mentioned Stetson Bennett's name. There are a lot of quarterbacks that could have won a lot of games at Georgia besides Stetson Bennett. And I believe firmly that this team can win in a lot of different ways. We've seen the double tight end look. We've seen them run the football. I think that you also have to take into account that when Josh Heupel's putting together a game plan, when he's developing plays, he knows, and when he's play calling, and people can say that Somebody else is handling play calling all you want, Joey Halsley. But at the end of the day, it all goes through Josh Heupel's headset. Halsley doesn't say, "Oh, it's fake punt time." So at the end of the day, it's what Heupel designs. He's going to try to minimize the number of times that Nico gets hit. I think we all would agree on that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so when he develops those game plans, it's going to take away the running ability, which Heisman voters love. And then you have some other guys like Jalen Milroe that you suddenly have to keep in the discussion. Now, that's Bank on it, and it's brought to you by Commercial Bank. Bank on it. Nico will not win the Heisman this year. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, and I'm here to tell you right now, I've been with Commercial Bank a long time, member FDIC, life made better. Commercial Bank creates positive experiences for every customer every day with better solutions, better technology. Commercial Bank for personal or business. Commercial Bank, life made better. Link right down below. Caleb, Nico can't win the Heisman this year. Tell me I'm wrong. And you know that I've had him right up at the top.
Let me boost your argument and then unmake it. Is that fair?
Yes, and I like how you stopped using steel man, straw man, because it always got me confused. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me boost it first. There is a trend that is permeating college football, and you called this 2 weeks ago and why it's happening, and you were dead right on this because we're seeing it in the NFL, where defenses have gotten so focused on trying to take away deep shots that they are now soft to where there's been renaissance of the power run game. You're seeing it in the NFL. You saw it last night with Derrick Henry rushing for 199 yards, and only my Titans could have been stupid enough to try to go to a pass-happy offense when they had a power run game at a time where there's a renaissance of the power run game. And I'm sorry, that's just my rant. But the other point of that is Josh Heupel. That benefits him because of his willingness to stay patient and committed to the run game. And if teams teams in college are committed to taking away deep shots, which is going to limit what Nico can do. However, this can only last so long because Tennessee is gashing people on the ground, Dave. They're gashing people. And at some point, teams are going to have to cheat up. The deep shots will be there. And I think the moment that happens, Dave, will be the Alabama game. When Nico is much more acclimated to the offense, Dylan Sampson will have 2 more big games where he rushes for like 150 yards, and everybody's talking about Tennessee's rushing attack. Alabama's going to come in and realize that and say, we got to take away Dylan Sampson. And that's where Nico can go off. And it is 2 undefeated teams at Neyland Stadium. Nico going off. All of a sudden, he's right back in the Heisman race at that point. I think that the other side to this is while teams are taking away the deep shots, they're still leaving the middle of the field open a lot. And Nico works the middle of the field better than any quarterback at Tennessee, better than anybody I've ever seen. I'm just going to be honest. And so with that in mind, I think you're going to see him. You're not going to get as many Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt plays for 75 yards or a touchdown, but you might get 3 passes to Dante Thornton, Brew McCoy, and Squirrel White that go 75 yards total for a touchdown. And you're going to see a lot more of that.
I want to ask you if you would agree with this, that Nico, even though it's a team game and win-loss is not a quarterback stat, but I'm sorry, it's often associated with that. Shouldn't be, but it is. Jim Kelly was a great quarterback, even though he lost 4 Super Bowls. All right, so Peyton Manning was a great quarterback, even though he didn't beat Florida. But my question is, does he have to win either the Alabama-Georgia game or both to win the Heisman? Bank on it. I don't think Nico can win the Heisman this year. Caleb does. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right, so does Tennessee have to beat either Alabama or Georgia or both for Nico to win the Heisman.
Yeah, they have to beat one of them, and that Nico has to light up one of them too. But I think that's going to happen. I think he's going to light up Alabama. And now I missed it. I thought he was going to light up Oklahoma. Flow of the game, banged up tackles made that not really plausible. But I do think he's going to light up Alabama. But yes, he has to light up one of them. Doesn't have to do both, but he has to light up one of them. Now, to your point, and this has always cost Tennessee in the past, not lighting up Georgia could be very harmful to Tennessee because, once again, Tennessee, that's their only marquee November showdown. Guys, the biggest reason Tennessee doesn't have a Heisman winner to this point is because they don't have that many marquee November showdowns in their history. There just haven't been the chances.
That's a great point. I mean, a lot of those, and the team would get down oftentimes against Vanderbilt or Kentucky because they didn't have things to play for. I mean, you were the first person, it's been a while, that you brought that up. I mean, they do have those November showdowns now, so I would think that he would have that opportunity, which would be big. Because I will tell you this, that you do not win the Heisman in October. You win it in November. You just keep yourself in position in September and October. Here's the other thing that I don't really think you can argue with is that a lot of Heisman voters are lazy. All right. So, I mean, it really is like a big deal to me. I appreciate the opportunity to vote on the Heisman. But Caleb, I mean, after the regular season's over, when the votes are in, I take a couple of hours and I look at everybody. But I think most people, let's say that Jalen Milroe wins the SEC. And Alabama wins the SEC. I think they would just easily pick Jalen Milroe. Same for Carson Beck, which isn't going to happen because he's got a noodle for an arm. So, but I think you'd have to concede that a lot of the Heisman voters are lazy.
Yeah. The whole reason Charles Woodson beat Peyton Manning was what happened the last weekend in November. When Peyton Manning, unfortunately for Tennessee, struggled to beat Vanderbilt because, like you said, they got down. They didn't really care about that game, and Peyton Manning had a horrible performance. They win 17-10. And Charles Woodson has a punt return touchdown, catches a touchdown, and has an interception as Michigan beats Ohio State. That's all anybody ever saw. No one paid attention to the rest of the year. And they gave Charles Woodson the Heisman over that. That happens all the time. And I'm with you. Heisman voters are lazy. And you're right.
Except for me. Except for me. You got to give me some credit. I'll put in my work.
No, not all Heisman voters. I think people really do take the vote seriously. Look, I take my vote seriously, Dave. When I was at SEC Media Days last year, I was very, very methodical in who I voted for. And I was very, very serious about it. And I actually took great offense to someone voting Vanderbilt to win the SEC because I just thought that, you know, you're trolling when you do that, but it's like those baseball Hall of Fame voters that are like, well, this person can't be the first unanimous Hall of Famer, so I'm not going to vote for them to get in. And I'm like, you shouldn't have a vote if you do stuff like that.
Let's get if somebody wants to throw in a super chat, we don't ask for that, but it goes straight to Quincy Calhoun, Caleb's 3-month-old son. But let's get a super chat for Quincy because we got the voice out of Caleb. I'm not sure which one that was, but that was, I would say at the very least, I would think a very uppity, pretentious English person. And
no,
by the way,
I was making a dumb person voice.
Well, it sounded pretentious. All right. So, by the way, we might have British Dave Hooker on the program to pick against you. I don't know if you've seen him on Twitter.
Yes, I saw you tweeting him this weekend.
Yes. So British Dave Hooker, who is a soccer ref in England, is going to match off against Caleb in picks for the ages, really, I would say. And we'll see if he can top Caleb Calhoun. All right. So coming up on the we're going to have this day in Tennessee sports history. Also, we'll have stat of the day. So a lot to get to. Hang tight. 2 minutes off the hook sports. Oh, and a new poll question that is up on the YouTuber. What is that, Caleb?
The poll question right now is if Nico doesn't win the it's other than Alabama and Georgia. I am most concerned about Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, and Mississippi State. Kentucky slightly leads at 41%.
Well,
Arkansas,
don't give away the answer yet.
All right, I'm sorry. I won't
All
give away
right.
the answer.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you why it's the Cats next off the hook sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2018 Ford Mustang convertible, 24,550, 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, 29,789, 2022 Ford Escape SEL all-wheel drive, 26,975. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, this day in Tennessee sports history coming up. First, can you give us an update on the poll question that people can take part in on the YouTuber?
Yes. Other than Alabama, Georgia, I am most concerned about Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, and Mississippi State. 47% say Kentucky by plurality. Arkansas second. Florida's third. Guys, I'm just going to say it. I understand why people say Kentucky, but y'all are wrong because it's not going to happen. That's not the scary one for Tennessee.
Okay, so I think I would be nervous if I was Kentucky.
3 reasons.
I mean, I would be nervous if I was Tennessee playing Kentucky. I mean, listen, that's a physical football game that knocked the heck out of Ole Miss.
Here's a few reasons this game's not concerning for Tennessee. There's actually 4. The biggest one is it's Kentucky and it's Tennessee, and Tennessee doesn't lose to Kentucky. The second biggest one, Tennessee has them off a bye, which is a huge advantage. The third, Tennessee's at home. The fourth, Kentucky has a terrible offensive line, which is literally the one thing you don't want to have when facing Tennessee.
Okay, rank those then, 1 through 4, before we get to this day in Tennessee sports history. Please hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed at this point, do so, and I'll tell you how you can win a Garmin watch and a pick 6. That's 6 glossy photos signed by Tennessee's defensive backs. But how would you rate Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State?
Okay, so me personally, you guys are going to call me crazy, but I'm still going to say Florida's the biggest threat to Tennessee.
Okay.
Look, it's the psychological aspect plus plus the fact that, as Will West pointed out last week, top to bottom, Florida has the best roster of these 4 teams still. And now, none of these teams are a threat to Tennessee. But number 2, I've got Mississippi State. I think by late November, Mississippi State's going to figure it out. I have not given up hope on Mississippi State under Jeff Lebby their first year. And I think they're going to be one of those teams. You know, those teams that are really bad in September, you forget about them, and then they score some upsets in November, Dave, because they figure it out. That's going to be Mississippi State. So I got Mississippi State number 2.
Okay, it's definitely Kentucky because they're the most physical team on this group. And I think that Mark Stoops might say to himself, hey, I'll throw another deep pass now and again. And he may be evolving as a coach because, again, if you're just tuning into the program, Lane Kiffin said that he never took a deep shot in that same situation, which he did late in the game. I thought it was gutsy. I think it shows that Stoops is ready to win more than just people's respect. All right.
But you know what?
Hold on. Then I think it's Arkansas because they're on the road. Florida, I think, is going to continue to be a dumpster fire. And I just think Tennessee out-talents Mississippi State. So,
do you think there's any real legitimate chance that Tennessee loses any of these games, though? Because I don't.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. If the offensive line doesn't get healthy, absolutely.
I don't see any chance they lose any of these games, including the Kentucky one. Tennessee, you know what Tennessee needs to be Kentucky?
Just to play at a C+ level. I mean, but if they don't have, if they've got 2 tackles that are out like they had against Oklahoma, any of these games are losable.
They need a safety to be Kentucky. If they get a safety, they're winning 2-0. Kentucky's not scoring on them.
Okay. All right. Well, now I'll give you that. I think they'll have a really difficult time scoring. However, I think that Tennessee better be ready to get popped in the mouth because that's a very physical team. Ole Miss's team of divas did not like getting smacked around, and it was obvious. Now, the only guy that I thought continued to fight, not worried about getting hit, was their quarterback, Jackson Dart, who I like even more. If Jackson Dart and Carson Beck changed positions, you might be talking about one of the better teams in recent history. I think I think there would be that big of a difference. Nevertheless,
That's a good point, though. Just to add to it, Tennessee doesn't have a team of divas. They got some big nasties on the defensive line that embrace getting hit.
Oh, I agree. Culture's good, but I'm talking about flip-flop when Tennessee has the ball. Okay. So, yeah. No, I agree. Tennessee is physical, too. There's no question about that. Again, I think, and we're going to talk about this, Tennessee's going to be double-digit favorites in all these games. And I did some research with an analyst that sets lines, and he is going to be a part of the program before long, but he is really, really good in the algorithm that he produces, and he thinks Tennessee's double digits in the remaining games they play. So I don't think they're going to, except for Alabama and Georgia, I don't think they're going to lose any of these games, but I think Kentucky's the most difficult. That's fine. All right, now, this day in Tennessee sports history is...
On this day, 35 years ago, Dave, Reggie Cobb had a 79-yard touchdown run to lead Tennessee to a 21-14 win over 4th-ranked Auburn in 1989. It was really the coming out party for the 89 Vols. If you remember, guys, if you guys don't know the story, they went 5-6 in 1988. Started the year 0-6, won the final 5 games, but Majors was all but fired almost, and people thought this was his last year. He was former offensive coordinator, changes up the defense.
Went from a 3-4 to a 4-3. It was a massive change in the middle of the season. I've never even heard of that since.
Yeah, no, that's true. Tennessee starts out 3-0. One was a signature win at UCLA, but it turned out UCLA was overrated that year. They're facing an Auburn team that, for those who don't know, was the team of the 80s in the SEC. And Tennessee beats them 21-14, really proved that they were back. That honestly set in motion that game. Ended up resulting in them winning the SEC championship that year and set in motion a 16-year run that I would say was one of the greatest 16-year runs in school history from 89 to 2004.
Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. And we encourage you to use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. So there we go. And I've got the stat of the day coming up, so you don't even have to worry about that. And this one's going to blow you away. This one goes back to like the 50s. So we'll have that here momentarily. That should be that will interest you greatly. Let's just go ahead and put it that way. I want to go to SEC power rankings now, if we can. And Caleb, I know you have that online as we speak. It was the first shakeup weekend, I would say, as we've been projecting teams and how they would fare if they met at a neutral site. That's coming up here momentarily. But first, I want to talk about Vols double digits to go 10-2. That might surprise you a little bit. A double-digit favorites against all opponents except for Georgia and Alabama. But I think the Alabama number might actually surprise you the most.
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The day.
I hit like 13 buttons. Let's talk about Tennessee and potential point spreads out there, and one that's going to shock you. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The Dave Hooker Show. Keep cool. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, you can read about it on offthehooksports.com by a good friend of mine who is incredible in gambling circles. And you're going to have to take my word for it from the get. But I will go ahead and tell you that he's tied in with the biggest bookmakers in the nation. And he is a bookmaker himself in that he provides a purely analytical view at each game. He does factor in home and away, so we don't have to get caught up on that. That's a factor. But let's go ahead and dive into this. And that is the fact that Tennessee will be a double-digit favorite in every game they play, except for, of course, Alabama and Georgia. Does that surprise you whatsoever?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I would have thought that when the season started, too.
I agree. Okay, so Tennessee looks like a lock to go 10-2 at the very worst, given that they'll be double-digit favorites. Now, Alabama, who the Vols play at home, would be a 1.5-point favorite if the Vols and Crimson Tide played Saturday. Does that number surprise you?
It does kind of shock me. I actually thought Tennessee would be favored by this point against Alabama.
Oh, okay. I thought you'd go the other way.
No.
I would have thought Alabama favored by 3 or 4.
No, I wouldn't have thought Alabama favored by 3 or 4. I thought Tennessee would get quite a few points for just being at home. And we know what Neyland Stadium is going to look like when that game happens. Dave, I'll just say it. I think it could be wilder than it was 2 years ago. And the other reason, you believe highly in Jalen Milroe, but what have we always said about football, Dave? Defense travels way better than offense. And
it's true.
How we still don't know how Jalen Milroe could handle everything he handled on Saturday against Georgia. How would he do that on the road against the Neyland Stadium crowd? I'm not so sure he can handle that. And so I'm much higher on. I'm shocked Tennessee's not favored right now. I would take that bet, guys, right now. Do it. Put some money on it.
Okay. Now, going back to the story, does it surprise you at all that if Tennessee and Georgia played on Saturday, that Tennessee, this is being Athens, who they were considered a 17-point underdog in May. So they put out some of the numbers for the big games because they want you to jump on board, and there's like a maximum bet you can make. So like Caleb and I would both have a lot of money if we got 17 points and the Vols, because I don't think it's 17 is realistic unless something insano happens, which could. But now Georgia is a 6-point favorite over Tennessee if the two met on Saturday. What do you make of that number?
See, I think that's too low. And this goes back to our old like, this is what I'm telling you, I think Georgia is significantly harder for Tennessee than Alabama. And I think Vegas, I can't believe I'm saying this. Vegas usually doesn't get fooled by the inner workings of 1 week. I think they're overreacting to 1 week.
Well, no, this is not Vegas. I mean, these numbers aren't out. These are analytical numbers that he plugs in. This is not at all. I mean, I'll give you an example. He's a fan of one SEC team, but he'll bet against them in a heartbeat if his number is if his prediction compared to the line is better. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's fair. I don't know how. I feel like the analytics are overreacting. I think Georgia should be a much bigger favorite. Even after watching that game, I think that Georgia is a better chance to limit what Tennessee can do offensively, and just the game being in Athens is going to favor them. I think the home crowd means a lot right now with many of these elite teams in the SEC. You give more. I don't get this because Vegas gives, and I know you're saying analytics, but part of the analytics is however many points you get for home and away. What they're saying is that Alabama would be a 4-point favorite over Tennessee on a neutral site, and that Georgia would be a 3-point favorite over Tennessee on a neutral site, assuming you give 3 points for home and away. And by the way,
but he does.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, how do you think that's crazy? I mean, if that game were this week, if that game were Saturday, I mean, it's hard I don't understand how you possibly think that Tennessee would be favored at Neyland Stadium, given their potential tackle situation, given the fact that Jalen Milroe might be an incredible generational talent that can play in any system. I don't see it like that. I think Tennessee would be, actually, I was surprised to see Tennessee would just be a 1.5-point underdog based on analytics. I would have guessed 4.
You're going to find me crazy. This is crazy, Caleb talking, but I'm going to go here. Jalen Milroe is going to look relatively pedestrian at Neyland Stadium. I'm just going to say this. Guys, as a starter, Jalen Milroe has not yet faced a ranked team on the road. Hasn't done it. And what did he do just recently? I mean, we're not talking about like last year. We're talking about 3 weeks ago. South Florida, he needed the fourth quarter to pull away. Yeah, he did face Wisconsin on the road, and Wisconsin's a good football team, but that was big noon kickoff, and this Wisconsin team is not like your old school Wisconsin teams, and they're even slower than usual. So I'm sorry. I don't think Jalen Milroe last year, Alabama almost lost to Auburn on the road in the Iron Bowl with that raucous crowd. Auburn just got blown out by New Mexico State the week before. This Auburn program is not good under Hugh Freeze. They almost lost to Auburn. Dave, I'm sorry. I still don't think Jalen Milroe is ready for a hostile road environment against a ranked team. And I think Tennessee is going to give him hell for that.
Okay. Is Tennessee ready for an elite quarterback? Because they have not played one to this point.
Is Tennessee ready for an elite quarterback? You could argue Jackson Arnold was elite, but maybe not. Oh, I mean, they ran off Dylan Gabriel for Jackson Arnold, and
Jackson Arnold got ran out of the game, and I think they probably were running him off for Hawkins now in retrospect.
Possibly. I think Tennessee's ready for an elite quarterback. I think it's debatable if Milroe's elite. Still, guys, Alabama was up 28-0 in that game and almost lost. Are we forgetting that? I mean, again, Georgia. Yes, they had a great first half. It was 28-0. Georgia took the lead in the fourth quarter. We're talking about this like Jalen Milroe didn't almost have one of the most epic choke jobs in college football history. If Ryan Williams doesn't make an amazing play on the ball coming back, Dave, a 17-year-old to his credit, what are we talking about today? Are we not talking about how Jalen Milroe choked and couldn't put the game away in the second half?
Okay, fair. I think that was, I'm surprised that you think that the analytics from our friend Tyler White would have, if the game were this Saturday, would have Tennessee as a 1.5-point underdog. I actually think that meant a lot of respect to the Vols and shows analytically, well, not respect, because respect is when you start talking about odds makers, but we're an all analytics guy that gets programmed into this algorithm and spits this number out. So I think it's a sign that Tennessee's accomplished more to this point in the season, playing basically two teams that were trash two teams that didn't have a quarterback at the time. And I actually read this as a very positive sign. Coming up, we're going to visit with John Neubert, and we'll give you an incredible preview of Arkansas because we're getting way ahead of ourselves. We're talking about Alabama, we're talking about Georgia, and all these teams. I can see John down there, and he's probably looking at us like, oh, man, these guys are just overlooking Arkansas. That's going to be a topic on my show. That's exactly what he's doing. So blame me. Like back in the day when Eric Ainge said anybody could play at Sanford Stadium and it wasn't a difficult place to play. I'm that guy that is may rile up the Razorbacks. 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Off the Hook Sports, a preview of Arkansas, what you need to know up next. Off the Hook Sports.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Welcome back to the program. We have a very special guest that we want to get to. I do want to remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. Hound Dogs of Knoxville, and they're completely licensed, have all the gear that you need. Let's get right to our special guest we'll bring in, John Neubert, and he does a lot. We've decided to move our guest in the middle now, John, so we're going to move you in the middle if that's okay.
Yeah, I've always been a big middle guy, so I appreciate you.
Don't know what that means, but I like it. You're the meat of the sandwich. All right, he's the owner of Inside Arkansas. He's a host of Locked On Hogs, and he does a fantastic job. You've probably seen him, Paul Feinbaum, and other places. So, John, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime I can hang out with my great friends over there in Knoxville talking some Tennessee stuff because they love me so much, I always appreciate it. So it's good to be on with you guys.
Good stuff. So, all right, let's jump into this right now. You heard us talking about Alabama and Georgia because we cover the team. We can do that. But how big of a factor do you think that could be that Arkansas's a game that a quality opponent could overlook? And I've been to Fayetteville a couple times, and that's not an easy environment. What are the chances that at some point this season Arkansas catches somebody by surprise?
I mean, next to none, because this is what this team does, and they've been doing it for a year and a half now. It's incredible. Like, I've never seen anything like it. It's like they go up against a bunch of teams, and they're like, oh, okay, you're going to suck. All right, we're going to make sure we suck just a little bit more, so that way we lose this game. I mean, that's what they're notoriously known for. Sam Pittman is now 6-16 in one possession games since being in Arkansas. And to really be the icing on the cake, he's lost 10 of the last 11 games by one possession. Like, it's just incredible how this team does this. So you mentioned that it's a very hostile environment in Fayetteville, and it can be, it should be, but for whatever reason, Arkansas plays their best games away from Fayetteville. They did last year. They went on the road and they lost LSU by a field goal in Death Valley. They lost to Alabama by a field goal over there in Tuscaloosa. They lost to Ole Miss by a touchdown on the road. Well, you know what we got to see last year in Fayetteville? My brothers in Christ, I saw a game that ended 7-3 in a loss to Mississippi State. I saw them get trounced by a 6-6 Auburn team. They got destroyed by Missouri. So as you can tell, there's just a lot of frustrations that are going on over here in Fayetteville that people aren't very high on the team right now. But they're capable of winning games, but they just refuse to find ways to win.
Okay, I want to get to the X's and O's. I know Caleb wants to jump in there. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. What are Arkansas's chances of beating Tennessee? 1, very good. Vols should be careful. 2, they've got a decent shot. 3, slim. Tennessee is too good. None. Not when Heupel has a bye week. What would you choose on that, John?
None. Just to be honest, I think that a lot of it has to do with Arkansas, but a lot of it has to do with, I just think Tennessee is that good. And as much it pains me to say, I think Tennessee really has something going. And we know, like, this past weekend was a great example that no one really knows about certain teams in the SEC. Like Ole Miss losing to Kentucky. I was like, man, that just kind of shows you when you don't have that tough non-conference schedule to lead you up. I don't think they were ready for SEC play, and it kind of showed that way. So I think Tennessee, it's really, to me, Bama, Tennessee, and I still believe in Georgia as being the teams in this conference, and Tennessee might be the best of them. So I don't give Arkansas much chance. I think it's going to be a close game because it almost always is, but I just don't see any way that Arkansas is going to be able to slow down this offense, and even the defense is really good for Tennessee too. So I just don't see any way that they overcome that in Fayetteville.
All right, shoot, Caleb.
Okay, so John, one of the, and I'm just going to tell this to you up front. Dave and I and another columnist have a fun segment every Tuesday where we do Football IQ, where we just break down the dumbest coaching decisions of the previous week. And I'm sorry, Sam Pittman has made our list a lot.
Yeah, I bet so.
How much are the close losses from Arkansas because of the fact that Sam Pittman's great at one thing and terrible at the other? What I was going to say is he seems like he's great at getting his kids to want to play hard and tough for him, which makes them play close. But does it also seem like he also just makes basic in-game clock mismanagement mistakes that are always going to cost Arkansas in a close situation?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, everybody says this, and I don't know if you guys have said this, but at least when I go to SEC Media Days, everyone starts the conversation or starts the interview with, I like Sam Pittman. I really like Sam Pittman, but... And that's kind of how people are in Arkansas. It's like everyone likes Sam Pittman. I mean, if Arkansas was going to win a national championship in football, they would want Sam Pittman to hold the trophy. Like, they like the guy. But as you mentioned, some of the mistakes that he's making when it comes to in-game clock management or decision-making or even lack of decision-making, it's haunting. I mean, this past weekend is a great example of, oh, okay, so we're about to line up for a field goal. Oh, but we don't have enough people out on the field. So we got to spend a second half timeout, and then you run back on the field. Let's run a fake field goal just to see what happens. It didn't work. And so it's stuff like that where, earlier in the game, they had a fake punt that worked, and that was more of the call by the punter, David Bale. But those little mistakes, and we just talked about the one possession games, those little mistakes usually can be the difference in those one possession games. And that's what's really frustrating is, it's not all on Sam Pittman. The players got to play. They got to make plays. But it's those haunting, weird, no explanation really to it type of decisions that end up causing Arkansas to have these painful and frustrating losses that keep mounting up. So, yeah, I like Sam Pittman, and I think he has learned some, but, people always bring up, well, it's his first time as a head coach. He's been a head coach for 5 years. You got to be able to learn. You got to be able to get better from it, and we just haven't seen that very much here in Fayetteville.
Yeah, and I want to get to some X's and O's and some particular guys, but it's kind of like when somebody comes up to you and they say, John, no offense, but it's like the Sam Pittman thing. I like Sam Pittman, but.
Mm-hmm.
So after the no offense, you always say something offensive. So the Sam Pittman thing is, I like Sam Pittman, but he probably shouldn't be a head coach. Let's talk about Arkansas's offense. Because I know most of our audience is focused on the Vols and Georgia and Alabama and even Florida's meltdown. So you don't see as much of Arkansas in our neck of the woods. You have to seek it out a little bit. But what do you think of Arkansas offensively? What should Tennessee be mindful of? Where are their strengths and weaknesses? Give us a breakdown if you can.
Well, Jaquindon Jackson, the running back for Arkansas, is the best player on this team. He did not have a great game, statistically speaking, this past weekend, but I think a lot of that was because of Texas A&M doing a really good job defensively, taking him out of the game. He still leads the SEC in rushing, and if you've ever watched him run, when he gets the holes and when he gets the openings, he's taking advantage of it. He has speed, he has strength, he has size, he's got everything. And for Arkansas, that's something that they really need to focus in on and get him the ball as much as possible. You don't want him to wear down too much, but hey, it's do or die right now in SEC play. So he's been incredible. And Taylon Green, very inaccurate as a quarterback. I mean, you see the numbers. The completion percentage is not that high. And I think Razorback fans kind of knew that. He even come from Boise State. His percentage wasn't that high. But what he does with his legs and what he's able to do with his legs makes up for a lot of that. You want him to be accurate. You don't want to throw him picks, but there's a lot of his game when it comes to his legs that, third down and long. That's why Arkansas is one of the best teams in the country at third down conversions, is because he'll get pocket and if the wide receivers are covered and the offensive line is doing a good job, but the protection starts to break down, he'll just take off running and he'll make you pay. So that's really been their thing in their game. And also Andrew Armstrong, it's the only wide receiver, it seems like, that Taylon Green feels comfortable with, even though Isaac TeSlaa had a pretty good game this last week. Andrew Armstrong's he's an all SEC caliber wide receiver. I don't know if we'll see it because, there's been some problems with, as we mentioned, accuracy and all that, but that's really the go-to guys in this offense and the ones that you need to watch. If you're able to stop those guys or at least keep them in check, Arkansas is not going to have success. And that's where I give a lot of credit to Texas A&M because they did a really good job in that. And that's what's got to be worrisome if you're a Razorback fan going up against some of these solid SEC defenses.
So, John, sorry.
Good stuff, Caleb.
John, you talk about Taylon Green's mobility. Obviously, he has a coordinator that you guys are very familiar with, who is a great offensive mind, familiar with in multiple ways. But I wanted to ask about, Tennessee has been really feasting off a dominant pass rush against very, very bad offensive lines in Oklahoma and NC State to this point. And not really mobile quarterbacks either. I mean, Jackson Arnold somewhat, but this is probably the best. Would you say this is probably the best offensive line Tennessee is going to face and probably the most athletic quarterback they're going to face? Do you think that gives Arkansas how much of a chance does that give Arkansas in the sense of Tennessee's may not be ready for that?
I don't think it matters, to be honest. Because listen, Arkansas, fortunately for them, but also unfortunately because their win-loss record doesn't reflect it, Arkansas has not faced a good quarterback this year at all. They faced backup quarterbacks. They faced a backup quarterback last weekend in A&M. Weekend before that, they faced a backup quarterback against Auburn. And then even against Oklahoma State, they already have benched their starting quarterback, the one that Arkansas faced, because he's not very good. So they have not faced a good quarterback here in a bit. But the thing is that it's going to make them pay. I think the defense has done a good job this year. Like the defense did a great job on Saturday. And my theory has been if you hold an SEC team to 21 points, you should win that game. Because just to have how offenses are, you should win that game. And honestly, Arkansas's defense really only gave up, in my opinion, 14 points because one of the touchdowns that A&M had was because the offense fumbled within their own 5-yard line. And so it was just kind of an easy one for them. So it's something to where with Tennessee, because I respect Josh Heupel, I think he's a really good coach. I think Tennessee is extremely motivated. I know they probably didn't have the season last year that they wanted. And I think just the extra time and preparation is going to make this happen. Because correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure Arkansas has beaten Tennessee 2-3 times in a row now. I know they don't play as often, but I know they won in 2020 here in Fayetteville. I remember that game. And then in 2015, and then I believe in 2011. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this play, but there's this Joe Adams punt return that's really cool.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that one. Yeah,
I've seen so many like how I'm trying to fade all the girls when I got a girlfriend. It's like it's Joe Adams on the punt return.
That's right. Yeah. It's amazing how that video keeps popping up. But the point is like Arkansas has won the last 3 to my knowledge, but there are also 3 different coaches in that, and they're going to face a new one at Josh Heupel. So, but Tennessee is just, to me, too good, too talented, and if they don't win this game, you guys need to be really upset over there in Tennessee. Like, you need to be mad about it, because this is a very beatable team in Arkansas. I'm not saying it won't be close. I'm not saying Arkansas won't give them some frustrations, but this should be a game that Tennessee should win and not really be in jeopardy of losing at any point.
Yeah, we can throw out the stat. Tennessee hasn't beaten Arkansas since 2007. So it sounds like a monster stat, but they've only played 3 times in that time period. Yeah. But I might use that at some point. Give me your thoughts on the Razorbacks defense.
Yeah, the defense. Travis Williams is a really good defensive coordinator. He came in last season and was able to turn the defensive around, and because 2 years prior, or a year prior to that, they were the worst team in pass defense in the country, not in the SEC, in the country. And he's done a good job of, I hate to use this term because it's so cliche, but bend not break. They do just enough. They're really good against the run. I know that Le'Veon, of course, just name escaped me, the running back for A&M, but he had a good game statistically wise, but they held him in check really until the final drive. And then he kind of just went down the field and feasted a little bit. But Arkansas has been really good against the run. Landon Jackson, who was a preseason All-SEC player, he was missing up until this last week, and he finally got it going. So you're hoping that maybe he can find some ways to build some momentum off of that. But the linebackers have been really impressive, because Arkansas lost last year. They had 6 linebackers. They lost 5 of them, and all 5 of them are still playing college football. So if that kind of tells you what was going on. So it's a little scary where you lose all those players and you didn't really replace them with much, but they've been really good. The secondary's been banged up. 2 of the best defensive backs Arkansas has had in Jalen Braxton and Hudson Clark did not play the past 2 weeks. So they are expected, we'll find out more today when we hear from Sam Pittman, but they are expected to come back in this game against Tennessee, which will be huge. But Arkansas's defense has been doing a good enough job. Are they going to be perfect? Are they going to have any sort of one thing that they cause problems with? Maybe not, but they are at least going to be a team where they're not just giving up 500 yards in a game and 40 points. They're going to make you work for it. They've been really good at being physical up front, not getting much to the quarterback, but they've gotten better. They've gotten better at it each and every game. So that could be something at least Tennessee would have to be able to be mindful of too.
John, we'll let you out of here, and I want to know how to follow your work for those that don't know. But first, I'll ask you this question, and it's our poll question on YouTube, so we would invite our listeners and viewers to give that a vote. The best team in the SEC is Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, other.
I mean, I have to give it to Alabama right now, just because of that one of the awesome games of the weekend with Alabama and Georgia, which I honestly thought Georgia was going to win that one. And maybe they should have. Crazy game. But, you just look at the total body of work. Alabama's got the best resume. They went up to Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin's not like the greatest team ever, but still going on a road environment and into another Power 5 team is always tough. And they've taken care of business every step of the way. And, they had Georgia come into town and they won. And so they got kind of the best resume, the best wins. So it's between them and Texas, to be honest. For me, Texas, I still can't wait to see some of the games that they have left on their schedule. And Tennessee's right there. And it's not, I've mentioned Tennessee to me is in the mix of the top 3 teams in the SEC. But I want to see what they could do against one of these high caliber opponents that they are going to end up playing, like the Alabamas or whoever. So right now, I probably give the nod to Alabama, Texas right there on their heels, and then probably Tennessee after that.
Yep. Caleb, change that, if you can, Caleb, change that poll question to include Texas. I'm an old guy, John. I kind of forgot they're in the SEC. And just like when I was watching over the weekend Oklahoma play, I kept thinking of Arkansas. And it still feels weird to me. But
John, I'm sorry.
Give me, if you can, Arkansas, finish this statement for me. Arkansas will upset Tennessee
if Tennessee doesn't show up to the game. That would maybe happen. No, the way that Arkansas would upset Tennessee is if Tennessee can't stop Jaquindon Jackson and Taylor Green in the rushing game. Because that's it. Like, that's what you have to do to beat Arkansas. And it's not easy to do, but A&M found a way. Because that's what's frustrating about it. A&M's not a good football team. They're not good. But they did a good job against Arkansas' strength. and they did enough to win. And so you got to give them credit for that. So to me, if Arkansas has any chance in this one, it's going to have to be based on Jaquin and Jackson and Taylon Green having a great game on the ground and rushing for 200, 250 yards as a team. To me, that's their best chance of winning this game.
John, you got to address a suspicion that many of us in the SEC have, because I know Arkansas is in the SEC, but y'all are so far west that for the longest time, Arkansas, before Oklahoma and Texas A&M were at it, it's always hard to gauge what's going on out in Fayetteville. What are the chances that Sam Pittman is fired and Bobby Petrino takes the reins again?
0. Because, and here's the thing, I am the biggest Bobby Petrino fan there is. Like I was a student at the University of Arkansas during the Petrino era, and it was the best era of Razorback football, in my opinion.
You didn't get on a motorcycle with him, did you?
No. Hey, listen, I was the one. If I did, I'd have a lot of money. But it was one of the things where it was just the most Arkansas thing ever, for the way that it ended. And honestly, I thought it was going to be the most shocking story in the history of Razorback athletics to see him back as the offensive coordinator until they decided to hire John Calipari in basketball, which I never would have dreamed that in a million years. But he's a guy that you can tell he doesn't want to deal with this NIL stuff. He's never been someone who likes the media. He's never been someone who likes to go to, around town and shaking hands, kissing babies. That's not his style. He is so happy and content just coaching offense and coaching quarterbacks. That's all he wants to do. He doesn't want to deal with NIL nonsense. He doesn't want to deal with any of that. He just wants to coach, and he's in the perfect role for him. So I would be hard pressed to think he ever takes another head coaching job, at least at a major college football program. But if the thing happened with Sam Pittman, my guess would be, say if it was even disastrous and they needed an interim, it would be Travis Williams that would probably, the defensive coordinator, take over and just continue to let Petrino do this thing, because I just don't see any way that he wants to stay as a head coach anywhere, much less Arkansas once again.
John, have a great day, sir. How do we follow your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media, John Neighbors Show. Just check out all of our content on Inside Arkansas, where we are on YouTube, as well as across social media platforms there. We also got a great website, InsideArkansas.com. Also do Locked On Razorbacks podcast each and every day. #1 Razorback podcast in the world. At least that's what they tell me. And so, you can check it out there as well. And I appreciate you guys, and just really appreciate Tennessee holding on to the future Razorback head coach, Tony Vitello. Good that you got your title, and I can't wait for that to happen.
Look at the Vitello thing that's out there.
He's Arkansas's next head coach, guys. I'm just trying to get everybody ready for it, trying to get all the Vol fans ready for it. So just be prepared. It's fine. Just be prepared.
Tennessee got a title out of him, so they're still satisfied, probably.
Oh yeah. No, listen, hey, it's great. It's great, and I'm happy for Tony V. And it's just good that Tennessee will have that title to always remember when he goes into Arkansas and starts winning them. So it'll be awesome, though. So we appreciate you guys holding on to him while we let Dave Van Horn finish out his career at Arkansas, and then Tony V just steps right in. It's gonna be awesome.
John, we appreciate you, bud.
Anytime. Appreciate you guys.
Wow, that would be a break-in type of show, wouldn't it? We break in for like big commitments. We break in for major news. If Tony Vitello went to Arkansas, we would break in.
Here's the thing. Tony Vitello, we do know we all believe he's somewhat of a playboy, right? In Knoxville. And I've said before that for a landlocked state, and I say this guy's being from Memphis, so I know the state relatively well. Arkansas's got the prettiest beaches in the country, and it's a landlocked state. Tony Vitello would love to just be hanging out on those Arkansas beaches again.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Tony Vitello.
All right. So let's get to SEC Power Rankings. SEC Power Rankings. Can I share my quick Uncle Dave story that I told you about Arkansas?
I need the Uncle Dave story. Let's go.
Okay. So I'm in Arkansas. This is a true story. I'm in Arkansas, and I believe I was rolling with Mike Strange and Austin Ward. So we bump into a guy that wanted to show us how much money he had, and he liked the fact that we were sports reporters. So he bought all our drinks and said, blah, blah, blah. You've got to go to this night. He bought our food as well. Like, we ate at this barbecue place. It was really weird. And, he wanted to show off his money. Fine. Hit like and subscribe if that gets on your nerves, because it does mine. But I accepted. So he goes, you've got to go to this club because it's got this VIP room. You got to meet somebody. And I'm thinking, who am I going to meet in the VIP room in Fayetteville, Arkansas? I mean, who the hell could that be? I don't think that Gwen Stefani or anybody fantastic is in Fayetteville. So I'm wondering who it might be. go in the VIP room. I look over. I'm like, he looks familiar, but he had long hair. Guess who it was? Clint Sterner. So it's Clint Sterner, and we both get up, and this guy wants to introduce each other. And so I shake Clint Sterner's hand, and then I say to myself, man, the only place the only place you're more popular than Fayetteville is Knoxville, because of course the stumble fumble. And he goes, That was the end of that conversation. So I thought I'll just sit down in the VIP room, continue having my drink. And a security guard came up to me and said, sir, you've been asked to leave the VIP area. And I said, why? I go, sir, you've just been asked to leave. So Clint Sterner actually threw me out of a VIP area. How about that?
That is pretty epic. I guess you could say you stumbled your response to Clint Sterner.
Good. That's pretty good. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to visit with Stephen Willis to talk about how disastrous things are perhaps in Oxford, or with the 12-team playoff, does he believe that the Rebels can turn it around? I think so, but I want to get Stephen's thoughts on that because he knows Lane Kiffin and that team far better than me. So give us just like 2 minutes and we'll be right back off the Hook Sports.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2018 Ford Mustang Convertible, 24,550, 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, 29,789, 2022 Ford Escape SEL all-wheel drive, 26,975. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, Caleb, give us an update on the poll question if you can, because we have a very special guest coming up.
The best team in the SEC is Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. Tennessee leads by plurality. Alabama second, Texas is third, and Georgia is fourth. Man, people are just... Am I the only one that is like not overreacting to Georgia losing the way they did over the weekend?
I suppose so. I mean, the way they lost was a one-score game. I don't have as much a problem with that as you apparently do. But I've got a problem with Carson Beck because I just don't think he has the arm strength to be an elite quarterback. But that's a topic for another day. I will tell you this, that I've said from the beginning of the season, after I saw Jackson Dart and what I know about Nico, because I know that program better than any, that those will be the two best quarterbacks long term. I'm talking NFL as well. Now, you could be like Bryce Young and get drafted by the Carolina Panthers, and you never know. So there's a lot of unknowns out there. But let's bring Stephen Willis in with Locked on Ole Miss, and does a fantastic job. Stephen, what do you make of that assertion? And I'm projecting forward that Dart and Nico Iamaleava are stumbled, that they are the two most talented long-term quarterbacks in the SEC.
I think that's about right. I'd probably put Quinn Ewers in that category as well whenever he's healthy. But I do think that Nico and Jackson have the ability to do that. Now, Jackson Dart fell for a trap against Kentucky over the weekend that he has the best wide receiver potentially in all of college football on his team. And like 90% of his passes went in his direction during the Kentucky game. He just leaned on him way too much. And because of that, Kentucky was able to muck up the game a little bit. And that game became an ugly thing that Mark Stoops absolutely wanted to happen. And I said on my show all week, if that happened, it would be 16-13 or something in the fourth quarter and Kentucky would be driving. Well, that's exactly what happened. And then you have that weird fluke 4th and 7 and the touchdown, and Kentucky ended up winning the game. Perfect game call, perfect game plan by Mark Stoops. But Jackson Dart, he has to be able to spread the ball around. Ole Miss spent millions of dollars in the offseason on weapons. You have to use them.
Okay, along those lines, because this would not be the point to throw up the white flag in still September or even early October, depending on when people are watching this. But I want to include you on today's tough question because I specifically wanted this for you, if you don't mind. How's that sound?
Okay.
And
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Stephen, I will simply ask you this. After the loss on Saturday to Kentucky, is Ole Miss in trouble?
No, they're not in trouble yet because in the 12-team playoff, an SEC team realistically can lose 2 games in a season. You still have Georgia on the schedule, so if Ole Miss goes down to Baton Rouge, that kind of replaces that Kentucky game, and they're kind of where we all thought they would be anyway going into this season. So I do not think they're in trouble. But if Ole Miss drops another game between South Carolina, Oklahoma, Arkansas, or even down in the swamp in Florida or the Egg Bowl or something like that, they are in real trouble at that point. Their margin of error is basically gone. But this game by itself against Kentucky is not really affecting the goals anyway. You just have to win in Death Valley now.
Stephen, how much faith do you put in Lane Kiffin to be able to mentally regroup this team? We know Lane Kiffin as the X's and O's genius as he is, and I believe he is, but how much faith do you put in him as the guy that can really get the guys to refocus after a loss like this?
Oh, I have all the faith in the world because we saw it in 2023. Ole Miss went into that Alabama game that everybody remembered. Everybody thought that Ole Miss was going to win that game. Ole Miss didn't play particularly well, ended up losing to a Jalen Milroe game when he was in his second or third start. He was not the Jalen Milroe that Georgia saw running around the other night. He was a completely different guy. And Ole Miss was able to rebound the very next week and absolutely put a clinic on LSU, and that turned their whole season around. So I do think Lane Kiffin can do it because he has done it. If Ole Miss has the exact season that they had in 2023, Ole Miss is going to be in the playoffs.
Let me ask you this. From the outside looking in, I think a lot of people think that Lane Kiffin is looking for his next job, an elite job. And I'm not trying to rip on Ole Miss in any shape, form, or fashion, but there are jobs that are better funded out there. You know that. And I'm curious from what it's like there, because from the outside looking in, everybody believes that whether it was LSU before they hired Brian Kelly or maybe Florida after Billy Napier, that Lane would bounce for what he perceives as a better job. What's the consensus there in Oxford?
I think it's a wait and see type thing. Now, I do realize you're in Knoxville and everything, and also prayers and thoughts, everybody in East Tennessee, for what's going on right now. That's really tragic, and I'm so sorry about that. But Lane Kiffin in East Tennessee and Tennessee fans, they have a different view of what Lane is than what he has actually become. Every year, it's the same story at Ole Miss. He has a decent season. Some suitor comes in, whether it's Oregon or Miami or Florida the first time, or it's going to happen. He's going to end up in Auburn or Alabama. These rumors are constantly around and surrounding the program. But Lane Kiffin is still in Oxford at the moment. He is now one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in all of college football. He has a collective that, just like the Tennessee collective and the one in Georgia, is one of the most highly thought of in the entire country. The Ole Miss program right now is not where it was even 10 years ago. It's not the same thing. So I don't think they're necessarily worried about it, but with Lane Kiffin and everything, you never go 100% or 0% on anything.
Good point.
So, Steven, what about with Lane Kiffin, his ability in big games? Now, we're talking about Kentucky, which we wouldn't have considered a big game, but how much concern is there about him, against the Alabamas or the LSUs? Is that still a concern that he can't win those games in Oxford, or are you guys over that?
Yeah, the can't win the big game thing is kind of a moving the goalpost thing at this point, where it's kind of become either Alabama and Georgia is the only two teams that can count as a really big game. Because last year Ole Miss beat LSU, last year Ole Miss beat Penn State in the Access Bowl and the Peach Bowl, and won those games, but the rumor was still persist. It's like Ole Miss cannot beat Alabama or Georgia. And I honestly believe that Lane Kiffin had a Nick Saban problem with Alabama, and Alabama was just completely in his head. And Georgia is Georgia. They're the most talented team in all of college football. And I heard your poll question earlier. Georgia almost erased a 30-point deficit to Alabama on the road. Georgia should absolutely be in that conversation for being one of the best teams in the country still, even after losing that game. So if that's the big game, if that's the definition of what a big game that Lane Kiffin has to get over, the question then actually becomes, is Lane Kiffin a national championship caliber coach? Because that's what it is. If you beat Alabama and Georgia, you're a national championship caliber coach. It isn't just whether or not you can win the big game. It's whether or not you can win the biggest games. And that's probably the question and where he is right now.
Okay, do you believe Lane Kiffin is a national championship winning coach? I'll be honest with you. I covered him for a year. Mm-hmm. We kind of have somewhat of a relationship, but I would tell him this. I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I listen. Lane has shown the propensity in these games occasionally to do things that are out of character. If anybody remembers the Ole Miss Alabama game, I think it was in 2001, the Matt Corral game where he did the get your popcorn ready. You can see that personality handled it a little bit differently. And as long as he's not doing really what Nick Saban did, where every game was exactly the same, completely robotic, as long as he has these ups and downs, your team is going to have those ups and downs, which means there's going to be a situation to where you lose those games against Georgia and Alabama and slip up in other parts of the season. It's about the process, they say, but sometimes it looks like it's a little bit about the roller coaster as well.
Steven, I always wanted to ask you about, recruiting at Ole Miss, because I actually read a historical story one time about how if there weren't two Power 5 programs in the SEC, then the Mississippi State school would be the most dominant program in college football. If you look at recruiting, Mississippi State's struggling severely right now. If you guys can, if Ole Miss could ever just sink them into irrelevancy, how much of a powerhouse could Ole Miss be just recruiting the state of Mississippi?
Well, that's an interesting question, because there's probably I don't know, 10 4-star type players in there per capita that come out of Mississippi every single year. And when you look at a place like Georgia, where they put out 50 and 60 a year, it would be difficult to compete in that level. I do think if there was only one Power 5 program in the state of Mississippi, that Ole Miss would do better than they are now. They would look like LSU or even Arkansas, lack of better time. I know Vanderbilt's in Tennessee, but Tennessee, because they basically have owned that state for their whole life. And I think it would be a little bit better, but I think that Ole Miss is on a good little trajectory right now using the transfer portal and being one of the few schools in the country that is really going all in on this portal. If they can do that and mix that with those top 10 players in the state of Mississippi, if they can do that, that's a completely different animal. We'll have to see if they're able to do it. I think this is a proof of concept year for the way that Lane recruits. And with him going all in on the portal. If Ole Miss makes it to the playoff and does that, that's going to signal to Oklahoma State and all of these second-tier type schools that are out there that may not be the Texas or the Georgia and all of them, that, hey, it's okay to go through the portal and hit this heavily, and we might see a little bit of a paradigm shift in high school recruiting.
Let me ask you about what you just said, and that is they've assembled talent through the transfer portal. And that to me means there's a bunch of dudes playing key positions that didn't know each other a year ago. So I always wonder about chemistry. How concerned should Ole Miss fans be that chemistry could go south with a bunch of divas? I'm just using that term. I'm not calling them divas, as opposed to these guys have grown together and they realize what you said, that everything's still out there to play for.
Yeah, it's a little bit, because there are a couple of, I quote, mercenaries on Ole Miss's team, the one and done type players, but the team was built on transfers. Like Jackson Dart is a transfer, but he's a third-year starter. So you get the benefits of a high school recruiting player by getting transfer portal players with a lot of eligibility. And Lane Kiffin has done a really good job of getting players that have extra eligibility. Now, if Ole Miss loses another game, let's say Ole Miss goes to Williams-Brice Stadium and loses a football game. We all know that that is not outside the realm of possibility. And Ole Miss is 0-2 to start this season when they did the whole last dance thing with the Jackson Dart, that all the transfers coming in. And the playoffs are, for all intents and purposes, outside the realm of possibility. I think that at that point, you need to watch and see. Ole Miss might end up a 5-7 type team. You might see this thing Florida State real quickly. But if Ole Miss can kind of get right against South Carolina, just win the game, 1 point or 50 points, it doesn't matter. Just win that. Go down to Tiger Stadium and win that game. I think it'll rebound, and you'll see the players like Jared Ivey, who's a 3-year transfer from Georgia Tech. Jackson Dart is a 3-year transfer from USC. You have Ulysses Bentley, who's not playing for some weird reason right now. A lot of players on the offensive line. There's a lot of transfers that have come into Ole Miss and put a lot of time in. So the leadership and the culture is of transfers that have roots there. It's weird. It's not the typical transfer thing that you see. It is transfers that have roots there. So I think that if they can pull it off, they could recover pretty well. You're not going to see what Florida State's doing right now. But if Ole Miss were to lose another game really quickly, it could be problematic because there is a mercenary element to this team.
Wow. Steven, great stuff, buddy. How do we follow your work?
Check it out on Locked On Ole Miss on YouTube. We're also available wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheStevenWillis. It was awesome to hang out with you and everything. And thoughts and prayers to everybody in East Tennessee, and I hope you're safe.
Thank you. Be well, sir. I appreciate that.
Are you too, Dave?
Thank you. And we echo that as well. With terrible storms, and East Tennessee's wiped out. Just headed towards the North Carolina area, has wiped out entire small towns and has wiped out interstates. It's been tragic. So our thoughts and prayers are to those as well. Caleb, let me ask you this, and pull up Ole Miss's schedule. If you had to predict that Ole Miss goes in the tank, or that Ole Miss turns it around and they make the college football playoff, if you had to predict from one of those two, what would it be? Portions of the program brought to you by Medicare Misty, licensed in over 40 states. She can take care of you at no cost to you for your Medicare needs.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, so Ole Miss is most likely to tank or make the college football playoff.
I mean, between those two choices, I'm taking tank. Between those two choices.
Stu, I thought I would be by myself.
No, I mean, look, I'll just look. They don't even. They get screwed by the scheduling. They have to play 7 straight games before a bye. This is a season with 2 byes, so everybody else will have had rest before they face them. The next 2 teams, South Carolina and LSU. They're facing South Carolina, with South Carolina coming off a bye this week. That's not an easy game. The week after that, they visit LSU. I mean, I'll just say right now, I've already got LSU winning that game.
Okay, update our poll question. There's a new one there, but give us the results from the one that ran earlier. Best team in the SEC, which
Tennessee.
is go ahead.
Yeah, Tennessee 40%, Alabama 39%, Texas 15%, and Georgia 4%.
You know what those 4 teams have in common?
What's up?
Well, those 4 teams have one thing in common. It's not great quarterback play. It's not a great defense. It's not a great offensive line. They've got one thing in common that Ole Miss doesn't. TriStar Caps. Use the promo code HOOK. That's hooked to get 10% off TriStar Caps. And I'll tell you what it is in 30 seconds.
TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Here it is. They play tough and physical. Those 4 teams, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, are physical football teams. That's why Ole Miss, until they prove otherwise, does not deserve to be in the conversation any longer. And it would be one thing if they just got upset by Kentucky. But for those of you that really watched that game, they got beat around by Kentucky, Caleb.
Oh, they got smacked around. You sound so old school, though. You sound like such an old school SEC fan out of the 90s. Man, they're just tougher and physical. Just a tougher.
It's true.
I agree.
I mean, you can just tell. Other than Jackson Dart, man, nobody wanted to touch the ball on Saturday because they were getting the hell knocked out of them.
No, you're right. That's very true. College is still a game where the quarterback alone can't make a difference, unlike the NFL to a certain degree.
Well, and we've talked about it. Listen, football's turning into a running sport again because we've seen the numbers down in the NFL. We've seen a guy like Josh Heupel who loves to throw it around, adjust his thinking. Ultimately, if you look at any champion recently, Michigan in particular, they're very ground-based. And you don't even have to be ground-based. You just have to be more than competent at it. I'll tell you who's more than competent and awesome. That is Sports Treasure. Sports Treasures, Knoxville's oldest card shop. Over 5 million Sports Treasures in North Knoxville. They've been in business for 35 years. We love them. And as part of our relationship with Sports Treasures, we're able to offer you our weekly prizes and our monthly grand prize if you join Hooker's Corner. You have to be a paid member, just $9.98 a month, but you'll get increased recruiting coverage. You'll get more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. You'll also be registered to win our monthly prize. And the monthly prize is phenomenal. It's going to be 6 glossy photos autographed by Tennessee's defensive backs. We like to call it a pick 6. And if you're just a free member of Hooker's Corner, which you can go ahead and do, if we can put that link in the message board, I'd appreciate it. You will be registered for our Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. So when we hit 8,000 subscribers, if you're a free member on Hooker's Corner, don't have to be paid, but if you're free, you can win a Garmin provided by Rick Terry just by subscribing to this channel and being a free member of Hooker's Corner. So Caleb, SEC power rankings, give me that bottom 6 pretty quick, as I want people to take 1 second. If you're just joining, hit like and subscribe. Probably a lot of new viewers. We're live at 10 a.m. each and every weekday. So SEC power rankings, get us rolling, Caleb.
Number 16 is Mississippi State. They put up a fight against Texas, but they're still the worst team in the SEC.
You suck, you jackass.
Thank you.
Number 15, is Pastor Hugh Freeze's team, Auburn. And, Dave, I feel so sorry for such a good Christian man who is just such an honorable human being running such an honorable program at Auburn and really cares about his players. Auburn cost me money because that game hit the over on Saturday because Auburn managed to throw another pick six.
Caleb's Sarcasm brought to you by the UPS store in Hardin Valley. There to help you and individuals and small businesses by offering a wide variety of products and services locally owned and operating conveniently located at 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Link right below. All right, who's next, Caleb?
Number 14 is Florida. Congratulations, Florida. You're not the worst team in the SEC.
There you go.
Number 13 is Vanderbilt. Clark Lee's team should be 5-0. They have 2 very close losses, but so you could say they should be higher, but Dave, that's Vandy going to Vandy, right? So they're going to lose close games. That's what they do.
Okay, so but do you think at the end of the season you'll think Vanderbilt is better than 4 teams in the SEC?
Well, 3, Florida, Auburn, and Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State will surpass them. I think Auburn is quitting on their team. I think they're quitting on Hugh Freeze.
That's hot.
Okay, I wouldn't argue that. All right,
that sounds like some girl Hugh Freeze was into.
Yeah. I wouldn't disagree with any of that. Hooker's Hangout Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. Right down below. And they also have the 6-to-1 Brazilian Cocoa Energy Booster Premix that you can see over my shoulder. Instant white coffee, the golden label coffee bag with the limbs pictures on it. They started their dynasty back in 1909, and now they're in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Philip Bloom does a fantastic job. And I'm telling you, that coffee is awesome. Caleb, who's next?
All right, so next after Vanderbilt is Arkansas at number 12. Arkansas is kind of like Vanderbilt. It's like Hogs going to Hogs. We just talked about that with John Neighbors, and they should be 5-0, but because of Sam Pittman's in-game mistakes, they're 3-2.
You suck, you jackass.
All right, who's next?
Number 11 is Texas A&M. Mike Elko doesn't have a quarterback. They keep winning ugly, but guess what, Dave? They're 4-1, and I mean. Hey, say what you wanted to say, but they're 4-1 and they could be dangerous.
All righty. I can't argue with that. Who's next?
Number 10 is Oklahoma. They are staying afloat. Brent Venables' team is not down and out. They are 4-1 after beating Auburn thanks to another pick 6. Again, now when Auburn plays, you might as well take the over because Auburn's going to set up a lot of points for the other team by throwing a lot of pick 6s because that's what they do. And
That's crazy.
Oklahoma's better than that now if they found a quarterback.
Well, okay, but debate me on this, okay? Because you say that's crazy, but do you really have them ahead of Ole Miss, who I have at number 9?
Well, we'll see you have at 8 as well. Keep going. No, I would not have them in front of Ole Miss, but I think there is a debate to be had. Okay, who's next?
All right, so Ole Miss is number 9 with Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. Number 8, you got to have Kentucky at number 8. I mean, they just beat Ole Miss in Oxford, so...
Okay, I think that Oklahoma's a better football team than Kentucky, but not by a lot.
Okay, fair enough. But I think right now, with how the teams are playing right now, Kentucky would have beaten Oklahoma the 2 played on Saturday the way they played. And
so they played on Saturday, neutral field, neither has a home field advantage. So really, what does that matter? So if you had to pick them on Saturday, though, who wins?
I'm still saying maybe Kentucky. That defensive front for Kentucky would wreck Oklahoma's offensive line.
Okay, I would take Oklahoma because of quarterback play. Go right ahead.
All right, number 7 because circular logic requires me to. But you're going to hate this, but we gotta have Shane Beamer and South Carolina at number 7 right now. I mean, that dominating win over Kentucky looks pretty darn good right now.
Okay, go ahead. Next,
Dave, how dare you disrespect Shane Beamer like that? He is a classy, upstanding gentleman.
Yeah.
So
great. I mean, he may be a great person. But I just don't think that football team's great. I think I think the SEC's top heavy, but we'll get into that probably.
I kind of agree. Number 6 is Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou. They are undefeated. You could say they should. You could say they should be number 5, but I mean they're a very, very, very pedestrian undefeated team.
Yes. Okay. Who's next?
Number 5 is LSU. Don't look now, but LSU is starting to win big and getting better each week. And I know y'all think I'm some LSU homer, but they are looking pretty good right now. I know it's just South Alabama, but
I don't have a problem with that. I I don't think they're knocking on the door for the upper tier. And I think we know who the upper tier is now. What number are we at?
We're getting to the upper tier now because now this is all tier 1 and the top 4 are clear cut tier 1. But would you agree LSU's ahead of Missouri, even though LSU has a loss?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So number 4. Now, guys, this is based
I'll
on
tell you this. I'm not sure. Again, I think Oklahoma and LSU would be higher, closer than you think, but that's okay. Let's get to the upper tier, which includes the Vols.
Yes. You guys are going to hate me on this, and I'm sorry, but as of right now, I have to have Tennessee at 4 in my SEC power rankings.
Okay. Why?
Well, they didn't play. And if the best debate I would give you is Texas, because if you put Tennessee against Texas on a neutral field, Texas looked horrible over the weekend against Mississippi State. I could see you maybe favoring Tennessee over Texas, but Tennessee didn't play. They have issues on the offensive line. Still questioning that win over Oklahoma. Still questioning that win over NC State. As of right now, I think it's very close. I think all these teams are interchangeable, but I got them 4th among the 4 teams in that top tier as of right now.
Well, it may surprise you. I have absolutely no argument with that. I think that based off, I'm not going to say the eye test. Well, yeah, based off the eye test and with the injuries on the offensive line, I think that I would agree with you that Tennessee would have to be 4. And I thought I saw 2 very good teams in Georgia and Alabama go at it. Texas still a little bit unknown, but they've done more. So no, I have no argument with Tennessee being 4. I actually think they should be. So go ahead.
Yeah, perfect. Look at us being one and the same, hating on Tennessee.
Hating. I mean, they've got a chance to improve that.
Yeah. Number 3.
I definitely don't want to manufacture an argument.
Number 3 is Texas. They dropped because they should. It's not Arch Manning's fault, by the way. They just made other players on Texas made a series of mistakes against Mississippi State over the weekend that made that game closer than it should have been. But I mean, they still dominated. But I got Texas at number 3.
Yeah, but a series of mistakes is a sign of coaching, and Steve Sarkisian is known as an offensive coordinator and then a head coach with a problem in LA. So I'm not saying at all the problems come back, but I'm just saying that being a head coach is about ball security. I mean, that's one of the things that you've and not making mistakes and not making stupid plays. That falls on the head coach. So, he's not any more proven than Josh Heupel is. As a matter of fact, I would argue less proven. Heupel had the undefeated season.
I kind of agree. And y'all, I know everybody's going to come at me like, Georgia lost a game, but they're number 2 in our SEC power rankings. I'm sorry, guys. If Georgia played Tennessee right now on a neutral field, Vegas would favor Georgia. Most of you guys would bet on Georgia. Okay.
Well, I don't think they bet on Georgia. I can tell you what that point spread would be based off our analytics. It'd be 3.5. So, would you take Tennessee this weekend if they were playing Georgia minus 3.5?
No, I wouldn't at all. I would take Georgia to cover that 3.5 point spread on a neutral field. And I'm sorry, guys, that Georgia was down 28-0 and almost came back and won that game. They're number 2 in my SEC power rankings. And Steven, who was just on with us for Locked On Ole Miss, was right. They're the most talented team in the country. I don't care that they lost. They're still the most talented team. I don't get – again, power rankings are how you're playing. They're not record-based. This isn't resume-based. Resume, record-based, yes, Tennessee's ahead of Georgia. Actual power rankings? No. Georgia's ahead of Tennessee right now. I'm not going to get fooled by one game.
Okay. So Alabama's number 1. I don't think anybody can really argue with that at this point. Can you?
No. Alabama's clearly number 1. I think that – I mean – again, it was everything in me not to put Georgia ahead of Alabama even after losing to Alabama, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not that ridiculous. I'll keep Alabama at number 1. But yeah, I think it's a close number 1. If Georgia and Alabama played on Saturday on a neutral field, Dave, who would you bet on?
I would take Alabama.
You would take Alabama over Georgia on a neutral field on Saturday?
Yeah, because I think there's a difference maker at quarterback, and I think there's a big problem at quarterback for Georgia. I mean, I think there's a difference maker to Alabama, and I think there's a problem in Georgia.
So how do
you ask me any game, I would go into that.
How do you ration Georgia's comeback in the second half then? and the way they came back.
Well, I think they threw some things at Milroe, a young quarterback that he hadn't seen before, and he could have easily crumbled. And then I'm all on board with your argument, but they still made plays to end up winning the game. And I think Carson Beck is just really, really bad. And I mean, again, if guys, if you want to go back and look, if you don't believe me, the one deep touchdown pass that he threw was woefully underthrown from a lack of arm strength. They're running those little go and stop routes because Carson Beck doesn't have the arm. So that's, I mean, you obviously believe they're okay with Beck. So that's where we differ. I think they've got a big time major league problem at quarterback.
Newsflash, Dave thinks Georgia should be relegated to Group of 5. We're going to tell everybody. By the way, before we get out of here, before we get out of this segment, Dave, fair or foul, did you see Ryan Williams, the Alabama receiver? Did you see what he put on his Twitter profile yesterday?
I did see that. Would you like to pull that up? Or
the picture of Michael.
Yeah, and that'll be part of our last look. Brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. First, our SEC Power Rankings, brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
All right, Caleb, are we ready for the full recap? Let's do that now. As you can read that on offthehooksports.com. Offthehooksports.com will have complete coverage of Tennessee visiting with the media as it is a game week. So, Caleb, what do you got as we recap the week? Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses, because I got LASIK. Caleb, what do we got?
All right, so the lead story is obviously Alabama beating Georgia, and I guess this big story out of this that we're not talking about is Alabama still owns Georgia. Georgia has lost a grand total of 3 games since 2021, all 3 to Alabama.
I do not think that's the biggest story of the weekend.
Well, what do you think it is?
I think it's Ole Miss losing, and getting out physicaled. I mean, to me, that they just went from, in my mind, to a definite college football playoff team to a potential national champion to they don't like to play big boy football.
Well, that's on my list. I said Ole Miss was exposed, and I usually hate seeing the word because whenever someone loses, everybody's like, "Oh, they were exposed," and I'm like, "What exposed?" But no, they actually. This is one of those situations where they actually were exposed by losing. Right? They were exposed as kind of a soft team.
Yeah,
so,
it absolutely is. It's Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson. Buster Douglas exposed that Mike Tyson wasn't training hard anymore, and that's exactly what he out physicaled Mike Tyson. The only man to do so, but
the reason I don't say it's the biggest story is that even going into last week, I said Ole Miss may be a pretender. I still don't. I didn't have them as a full-on contender yet. So
makes sense. I was a little bit higher on them than you. More from the weekend. Yeah, go ahead.
Because I can't pull it up because he's changed it back. But for those who were wondering, Ryan Williams made his profile pick Michael Vick on Sunday because he was killing dogs on Saturday. Bad joke, but
I didn't even see that one. Who was the Alabama player that had kill everyone on his
Oh, I don't know who had that one. I don't know who had that. But I saw that though. Well, it was hilarious because it said one said kill everyone, and then right next to me was with another guy that had a Bible verse on his. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Tim Tebow and Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah, I will tell you that really bothers me, the dog thing.
I mean, it was a bad joke, guys. It was a really, really bad joke.
More than that. It's more than that. I mean, if you think that's cool, then you're on the step of psychotic behavior.
I don't think he thinks it's cool. I think he was making an awful joke. I mean, I think he was just making a bad joke that ended wrong. He's 17.
Okay. Just this is how I feel about abuse to animals, and this is just me. We were at the beach, and there were these thousands of crabs running around. As you would walk towards them, they would feel the thumping, and they would walk away. I'll send you a picture. It's phenomenal. And this one 18-year-old kid, he picks one up, which like you have to chase them really hard. And then they had one big claw. I don't know what they're called. Maybe somebody on the message board. One big claw and one not claw. And he ripped its big claw off. And I turned to him and I said, it's good news to know you'll be a psychopath in one day.
Wow. I mean, yes, that is psychotic. I agree. And
Okay.
I'm against animal abuse, but Dave, I'm also against murder, but I've still made OJ jokes.
Okay, but no, he's not making a joke. But anyway, the kill everyone thing that one of the players had, I didn't have a problem with because I knew that was just referring to football. You want to go out there and play physical. It is funny, though, to see these things going on that would not have happened under Nick Saban. What's next on our recap last week brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and On.
All right, so
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
Go, Caleb, go.
Okay, so Miami survives controversially. They are still the inside track to lead the ACC to the college football playoff. Did you see that Hail Mary that was waved off against Virginia Tech on Friday? Guys, that was the right call. That was the right call to wave it off. If you look at it, it was conclusive. The Miami player had touched the ball when he was out of bounds on the Hail Mary on defense, which is why the Virginia Tech Hail Mary was waved off. Tough call, but it was the right call. Miami wins.
Yeah, and I think Miami is that team that will make the college football playoff and get shellacked. But we'll see. All right, who's next, Caleb?
Guys, there are two quiet other teams in the ACC right now that we have to give some credit to. One, Clemson's low-key rolling. Ever since that blowout loss to Georgia, they have been rolling.
Oh,
that's
crazy.
Who they beat, Caleb?
They just beat Stanford 40-14. Someone from the ACC has to go to the playoff. Your money, Clemson or Miami? Who would you take right now?
Miami.
Okay. You just want to go back to the days of Miami being great. You just missed the
No, I don't. I just, wow, Clemson beat Stanford. Let's get back to that. Way to bring the heat, Caleb. They beat the Cardinal. That's great.
I'm just saying they blew them out.
Well, no, what you did is you answered my question and then started arguing your own when you know that your statement was weak.
Okay.
You said they beat the Cardinal. Nobody says, "Ooh, great times are ahead. We beat the Cardinal." Nobody says that.
I think they still have talent on that team. And
Okay.
and the other ACC team,
They do not have any more talent than Oklahoma or Kentucky.
I disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Recruiting tells a different story. But also, right
Well,
on
then
that trip-
Tennessee doesn't have as much talent as Clemson if you just want to go off recruiting rankings.
Well, okay, but there's roster and then there's coaching and chemistry and so many other things like that. But I'm sorry, Tennessee's way closer to Clemson than Kentucky is. Tennessee's on par if you look at the transfer portal and their
I
recruiting.
think Tennessee's more talented than Clemson, but I think, okay, just on this scale, if Tennessee's a 9, Clemson's on talent, and let's say 10 is a national champion. We don't know who that is yet. So Tennessee's a 9, Clemson's an 8. Where's Kentucky? Or Clemson's a 7. Where's Kentucky?
No, Clemson's an 8 on talent. They've had multiple top 10 classes, Dave.
Okay.
I got Kentucky's a 5. Okay, sorry.
I would say Clemson is an 8 and Kentucky is a 7.
Well, on their trail, Dave, is another undefeated ACC team, and that is Duke. They are 5-0. Look out for Duke. Look out for Duke.
I still think the SEC should take North Carolina and Duke and become the basketball school because then they would have that great rivalry. Go
I'm
ahead.
just saying Manny Diaz coaches Duke now, and he will go down as more legendary Duke coach than Mike Krzyzewski. I'm kidding. I'm joking. All right, so number 4, the Florida State disaster keeps getting worse. Dave, Florida State sued the ACC for adding SMU, and then SMU just beat them 42-16.
Wow. You probably don't have time to do the math off the top of your head, but I'm curious what the score differential is as well. And that Florida State team, I don't pretend to know all the goings on behind that, but if you haven't quit and you're on that team, you're probably close to quitting.
I think
Caleb, who's next?
I think they quit. Look, I know you hate it, but Colorado is back to being a college football story. They just blew out UCF 48-21, and that's the most impressive win of the Deion Sanders era at Colorado. I mean, and they're now right there in the running to win the Big 12, by the way. And Travis Hunter, look, you have to make him one of the top 5 Heisman frontrunners now with another 100-yard receiving game and an interception. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
I agree. I'll have my Heisman column coming out on Wednesday, and he's going to be a part of it. I'll just go ahead and tell you that. It's projecting where I believe they'll be at the end of the year based off what I have seen. So this is the first time I think that he'll be a part of my top 5, but he will be. That comes out Wednesday. Check out Off the Hook Sports. We'll talk about it right here. So please make sure you're subscribed and have all your notifications on. Ring that bell. And hopefully you can click that like button for me so we can bring more people in. What else, Caleb, from the weekend?
Okay, so one of them is BYU is actually the clear Big 12 front runner, though, even though Colorado's in the running. BYU, I said take the money line on Baylor. I was right. They held them off 34-28 after winning 28-7. Utah. I'm sorry?
It's the magic underwear. Go ahead.
It is the magic underwear, and I know about that. All right, and then also the Group of 5 race. Washington State has lost to Boise State. So, Dave, you know who the top 3 teams in the inside track for the CFP from the Group of 5 are right now?
Who?
Army and Navy, both undefeated. And
Hey now.
Love that.
And after Matthew Sluka did that whole thing with UNLV won on Saturday, and they are also undefeated. They are the favorites right now to make the college football playoff out of the Group of 5.
If I've said it one time, I've said it a million times. UNLV is so deep that they can overcome a loss of even their best player and win it all. I know that I've said that, Caleb, haven't I?
You have.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I'm joking. I know.
Some people are like, Dave's just
Dave, chaos theory. Army Navy refused to move their game. So the college football playoff rankings will still come out before the Army Navy game happens. What if the college football playoff rankings come out? Army and Navy are both undefeated, and they have to pick one of them for the Group of 5 team, and they haven't played yet.
I like it.
And
Go ahead. I want you to finish the note. Portions of the program brought to you by Peak IV Hydration. Please put them in our chat box. You can order online these patches that will absolutely make you feel better, give you more energy. 100 or over 100 5-star reviews, fast and effective. They have locations in Knoxville and Sevierville if you choose to go in person. PeakIVHydration.com, PeakIVHydration.com. You were going to say, Caleb?
Yes, so I'm going to say that I got my quick Heisman race. This is not a projection, so this is just right now based on how teams have played. Jalen Milroe my Heisman leader right now just because of how he's played to this point. I got Travis Hunter number 2, Cam Ward number 3, Curtis Rourke number 4, and Dylan Gabriel number 5. So, and for those who want to know, Curtis Rourke is the quarterback at Indiana of all teams. My top 10 real quick is...
You know what? I want to get to your top 10, but I specifically want to take a second to thank a very good friend of the program, because if you're a contractor, you've absolutely got to know about Work Trucks. Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks with an X saves you time, less back and forth trips, and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod, work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special like cranes, dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people like you, contractors, to get back on the road, no dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know about Work Trucks. That's a fact. Service industry, Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go to Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. I'm telling you, they will have you fit to a T, and your business needs fit to a T. Proud supporter of the Vols. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. All right, Caleb. So your tops in the nation are?
All right, so this is my top 10. I think Alabama should be number 1. Texas is number 2. Tennessee's number 3. I moved Oregon up to number 4, and Penn State to number 5, and Miami to number 6. Missouri is number 7. Now, people are going to find this controversial. I got Georgia at number 8. I've got them ahead of Ohio State at number 9 because Ohio State still has their only win is Michigan State. So I got Ohio State at number 9, and I got Michigan.
How in the world do you have Oregon and Penn State in the top 5?
Well, because they have. Because, Dave, this is not about who's better. It's about quality wins. Okay, you would at least agree with me that Penn State and Oregon have a better resume than Ohio State to this point, right?
Yes.
I mean, so what can I have to put them in the top. This is not power rankings. This is the top 10 based on your resume. If I were to do a resume at the season ended today, what would my official rankings be for the college football playoff? That's how I do this.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Caleb, that you'd like to add to the recap?
Nope, that's pretty much it, except the fact that guys don't sleep on LSU. I'm telling you.
Okay. And lastly, if you had to vote that Ole Miss makes the college football playoff or loses 4 or more games, you would say?
I'd say 4 or more games, because I think they've got 2 more on their already on their schedule, and a third one is very possible. So
he's a toughie. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, banksandjones.com. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle for less for you. banksandjones.com.